Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Inspire FM. Very fortunate to be here with Ustaad Nouman Ali Khan. Sheikh, one of the things which stands out for me, and I'm sure many of our listeners, is the way you help us connect to the Quran and the word of Allah. And I just wanted to ask you about where this connection to the Quran first came for you, and where was the turning point for you and you realized that you're going to dedicate your life to the book of Allah, to the Quran.
May Allah make us all of us among people who dedicate their lives to Allah's book.
Ameen.
I don't consider myself one of those people, but I do try to get as much from Allah's book as I can. I think it started with the realization when I listened to a series on the translation of the Quran in Urdu by one of my first teachers, Dr. Abdul Sami', that the Quran is actually a conversation directly with me. Like I forgot everybody else was in the room when I was listening to him. I even forgot he was in the room. It just felt like the Quran is just having a conversation with me. And I realized I've been missing out on this conversation my whole life. And so most of what you hear me talk about is probably inspired by me pursuing that conversation with Allah myself. And the more I try to find and the more I try to explore, the more I feel an eagerness to want to share this with others. So I feel like life is short, and if I can leave a really beautiful gift for my fellow, first of all, my own children and my family, but also the Ummah and then humanity, if I can help them have a conversation with Allah through the Quran, then what better gift can you give somebody?
Most definitely. Exactly this conversation I remember you on a talk we play on the radio, where you mentioned somebody who came up to you and said, I've got certain problems and stuff, and you said, open up the Quran and there will be an answer there for you. And I remember you saying that this brother met you a little while later and he said, Subhanallah, it was there again. I opened the Quran and the answer was there. And he said another problem came, he opened the Quran and he goes, how are you doing this? Is this magic? Like the Quran has the answers. And I really felt this brother was able to connect to Allah, and he realized that the answers to all our problems in life the answers are in the Quran. What advice would you have for our Inspire FM listeners here in Luton, if they feel that they have that lacking? We've got Ramadan, of course, around the corner coming up. How can they really build that relationship with the Book of Allah?
So the Quran is not a straightforward book. If you ask somebody who has no connection to religion and somebody who understands literature and that you ask them to read a translation of the Quran, they would tell you that the Quran is not linear. What that means is that the Quran doesn't talk about one subject, then goes to another, then goes to another in order, right? It seems to be going, at first it seems like it's random, then it seems like it has its own sort of circular organization, and it loops back to a subject, then comes back to another subject, then changes the subject immediately, and then later on repeats itself, or it seems that way, right? So you can't really get a handle of, okay, well, here's what this surah is all about. Oftentimes people ask me to write a summary of each surah. It'll make things easier, right? And even though I can do some of that, I believe that what summaries do is they reduce a surah to 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 subjects. And there's so much more going on inside of a surah. It's almost like saying, to give you an analogy, summarize the human body, right? You could say it's got these organs, but there's so much more going on in each organ, and there's so much intricacy that it might help at some level, but it's oversimplifying something that's so much more beautiful. But regardless, to your question, how can somebody easily just connect with the Quran and find answers for their life? To understand that Allah gave us in this book, He gave us principles, He gave us stories that are going to be alive forever. Like, no story in the Quran died. Every one of those stories is alive, and some version of that is relived by us every day, right? So you're before you even open the Quran, the attitude with which you're looking at it is, this is going to be a mirror and it's going to reflect on my life in some way. Now, when you approach it with that, even then you might have difficulty understanding some ayat, or how is this applicable to me? That might be a question, right? And that's a very common question. And I think that's where one has to do two things. One has to really wonder for themselves before they do any study, what could Allah be telling me here? And then once they do that exercise and they come up with some answers, but they're not sure if they're the right answers or not, because you're not a specialist, right?
Yeah.
You're not a scholar, you're not a mufassir, etc. Then you go to those that may have been spending more time with Allah's book, that may have learned more, and then you go seek your answers from them. A lot of people listen to my lectures, right? And they say, I get all my Quran knowledge from you, and I say that's the wrong approach.
Wow.
I don't think you should do that. I think what you should do is you should study whatever surah you're studying, or whatever Quran you're reading, you should read it yourself. Think about it yourself with no outside influence. Nobody. Just you and Allah. That's it. You and the Quran. And then when you're done with that, and you say, I have some thoughts, but I wonder if I'm on the right track. Then you come and listen to someone like me, and your first exposure to the Quran wasn't my voice. Your first exposure was your own voice. It was your own ears. It was your own mind. Because then you even took me out of the equation. And then maybe some of the things I shared with you, you were already thinking. And maybe you were thinking of things that I didn't even think of. And then you have to go to somebody else. But if you start with me or start with somebody else, it's almost as if they're doing the thinking for you, right? The first step has to be you. The second step has to be someone like me. And then depending on whether or not I was able to do a good job, there will be third, fourth, and fifth steps. Right? But that first step always has to be you. And if you're pursuing it from that intention, there's no doubt in my mind that Allah will not leave anyone, any human being will come to His words, seeking His guidance that way, that Allah will leave them misguided.
SubhanAllah. I mean, may Allah guide us all.
Ameen.
I think a lot of people tend to think that with the nature of life, especially here in Luton in the UK, perhaps it's the same across the world, they're busy in their work, they've got family to look after. They find it very difficult to dedicate time to study.
Yeah.
I think we're just recently, just here, local brothers here in Luton, we've started a weekly circle, actually inspired by your deeper look at the Quran. So we do an ayah every week and just literally looking at your thoughts on it and then just discussing it between 4 or 5 brothers. But we still feel maybe that's not enough. Maybe half an hour a week. Maybe we can do more, but sometimes our lives don't allow us to do that more.
Right.
How would you suggest that what kind of time skills would you say is needed to dedicate to the Book of Allah?
So let's start with the idea of comparison. When you say we could be doing more, let me tell you there are millions and millions of people that are doing much less. And then there are also lots and lots and lots of people that are doing much more. So there's always going to be people that you're better than, and there's always going to be people that you're worse than. Right? So you can't ever be like, I got it right. Right? You can't get there. And Allah is not expecting us to be in some kind of a comparison with everybody else. What I think is that we live in an age of bombarding messages, whether it's social media, advertising, whatever platforms, the reading platform, the digital platforms, whatever platform, we're constantly being bombarded with messages. And whether we like to or not, whether we're making an effort to receive those messages or not, our brain is engaged with them all the time. We're sitting here in this room and I can see an advertising message on every product that's sitting here on the shelf, right? We're constantly exposed to them. In that environment, I want you to think about how if you were breathing in polluted air, you need to make sure you get away from that a little bit and be able to take in some fresh air, right? For your own good. The same way, if you're constantly consuming not nutritious food, you need to be able to step away from that and be able to eat healthy food, because it is going to impact your body, right, and your health. The same way, I think, we have to think of the Quran as nutrition, as a necessary component of our daily health. Like, I don't want to give you too long of a talk here, but I want you to think about 2 approaches. Some people think of their relationship with Islam and the Quran especially, they think of it like medicine, and others think of it like food. Okay, now what's medicine? Medicine, you go take it not every day. You take it when you're sick, when there's an emergency, right? So some people, my uncle's really sick, what Quran should I recite? My child has a fever, can you tell me a surah? I have a medical exam, can you tell me which dua I can make, etc., etc. That's the approach where your religion and the relationship you have with the sacred words of Allah is a relationship of medicine, and just give me a prescription, right? Keep writing me a prescription, right? But nutrition is not, you don't say, well, I have the situation, what should I eat? You're going to get up and you're going to need the energy, you're going to eat. And you're going to, a few hours later, get hungry again, you're going to eat again, right? But you're not going to eat everything at once. You're going to eat a little, give yourself a break, then you're going to eat a little, then you're going to give yourself a break, right? That's what the 5 prayers were, right? You pray, then you give yourself a break, then you pray, then you give yourself a break. And the prayer is actually Allah's way of teaching us the relationship we're supposed to have with Him and even with the Quran. Like, if I was just having a few minutes a day to just engage with the Quran thoughtfully, right? It's my daily nutrition. It's my daily intake, right? Just like hydration is, just like breathing is, just like food is. Then I think we'll be in a much better place emotionally, spiritually, physically, I think socially, even mentally. The Ummah will be in a better place if we just started thoughtfully engaging with what Allah is saying.
Alhamdulillah. And just finally, Sheikh, I know you've got the talk we were looking forward to, inshallah. Advice for parents in particular with children, with this world of social media and so many maybe obstacles out there for our children. What would your advice be to parents out there who are struggling with their children and trying to keep them on the deen, or maybe connect them with the Quran, make sure that they pray Salah 5 times a day?
I think we have this idea that children have to be given this top-down approach. Tell your kids what to do. Tell them to pray. Tell them to read Quran. Tell them to listen to this lecture. Tell them, and eventually they're not listening. And we're like, now what do I tell them? Right? So there's always this top-down thing. But human nature, right? We don't like anybody telling us what to do. You don't like the government telling you to pay more taxes. You don't like the police officer telling you to stop and pull over. You don't like your boss telling you come in on the weekend and do extra work. We don't like when someone tells us what to do, and parents are no different. Parents will be annoying to their kids when they tell them what to do. That's going to happen. How do you create a relationship where my son, my daughter, they feel connected to Allah without ever feeling like I told them to do it? That's actually, to me, the most important question for a parent. How do I make them not tell them to do that? Now, the thing is, I know you Europeans, Brits, everybody else, you guys are into your football, right? And if you're watching your football match and you're all fired up about, I don't know, Liverpool or Man United or whatever, right? And you're sitting there just going crazy over a penalty kick or over a red card or something, right? And you're just sitting there, I can't believe he did that. Your son sitting next to you, you didn't have to tell him to become passionate about football. He was just watching you watch this match, and he's like, I can't believe it, and your tweet will be like, I can't believe it either. Like, he's gonna, right? Your passion became contagious, right? Your food becomes their food. Why do I like chicken kadai? Like, I didn't grow up in Pakistan. Why do I love naan? Like, your parents had certain things they loved, and they passed that love on to you naturally, right? People's love of music, of food, of sports, of clothes, of language, like so many things that we love were just naturally passed down. And the things that your parents made you do don't pass down.
Yep.
Right? How many young men do I meet? My parents made me go to madrasa. They made me memorize Quran. They made me do this. They made me do this, and I just walked away from it all. Or my mom made me wear hijab. See, the thing is, the things you pass down with love pass on, right? So when they see a love in you of reciting the Quran or listening to beautiful recitation of the Quran, when they see you listening to something and discussing it and talking about it, because when you watch a match, you're going to talk about it for a few days. When you watch a news event, you're going to talk about it. When you watch a movie, they're going to talk about it. When you hear about an ayah, you're not talking about it. It was never part of the dinner conversation. It was never part of the car ride. They didn't hear that naturally. They only heard it when the sheikh is talking or when a Nouman Ali Khan video is playing. That means it's his conversation, but it's not your conversation, right?
Yeah.
Our kids will internalize what they see you internalize, right? So you're the most important teacher they have. No school, no sheikh, no YouTuber, no TikToker. Nobody else will have the influence that the parent has. But they have to understand, what does it mean to influence someone? And this human being that Allah put in your life, that is this is someone, whether you're an influencer to the world or not, Allah made you their primary influencer. You're their professor, you're their sheikh, you're their mentor, you're their imam, you're their you're their Islam, right? So you have to decide whether you're going to be an oppressive government or an authoritative police state, or you're going to be a best friend. And that'll determine how they feel about this religion. So I know for some people, they've tried it the hard way. Things are difficult because they have a teenager now, etc. The only quick advice for older kids, parents with older kids that are teenagers, etc. There's an age of defiance. There's an age of rebellion. There's an age of questioning everything that your parents are telling you to do, and kind of proving your own ground, and having temper tantrums and arrogance and things like that. You need to. It's hard, but as a parent, I have to step back from my emotions and my anger. How dare you talk to me this way? Who do you think you're talking to? I'm your father, I'm your mother, etc. I need to be able to step back from that. I need to realize there are hormonal changes happening. There are social changes happening. There are pressures this child is feeling that I never imagined feeling when I was their age, right? And I need to learn to empathize with what they're going through and what I'm not able to understand. So I'm not saying give them a free pass, but in Punjabi I think they say "Hat hola rakho," right? Just go easy a little bit. Just take it easy. Give a little space. It's okay. If they missed one prayer, instead of you always did you pray? Did you pray? Did you pray? Yeah, that's not going to help. That's not going to help. But they're expecting you're going to say, "Did you pray?" But you came in and you say, "Did you eat? Did you? I missed you." Are you going to say, "What? You didn't? I didn't know you didn't pray. I didn't notice." And all of a sudden, they were expecting a lecture and they got a friend, right? So you need to learn to break certain walls, and they don't break overnight. That takes months and months, sometimes years of work. And it may be that your child has distanced themselves from you at the age of 15 or 16. And before they make a comeback to you, they might be 20 or 21. That's possible. But you're in this for the long run. They need to see your doors are wider open. Your heart is more open as the years go by instead of becoming more closed, right? And the final thing I'll say about this is behaviors, right? Like, guy comes home one day and says, "Yeah, I'm going to marry my girlfriend," or "I'm just going to move in with her." Some crazy things. Youth are doing all kinds of things. And,
of course.
And the parents say, "What do I do now? And what do I need to talk to Nouman Ali Khan. I mean, maybe Mufti Menk is in town. Maybe you can just blow some on him or something, or get somebody to fix this kid." That's not going to fix it. That is not going to fix it. But what will fix it is, hey, if that's the decision you've made, you're an adult. If I died right now, Allah would be asking me about what I did. If you died right now, Allah will be asking you about what you did. He won't ask me, He'll ask you, because you're old enough to make your decisions. And I won't get in your way. But because I love you, I will ask you to do the right thing. And if this is what you want to do, at least do this in a halal way. Don't do this in a haram way. Right? Accept the reality of that situation. Accept that they have become autonomous, rebellious, whatever they've become. Your objective is to protect them from the hellfire, not to mold them to your expectations. Right? So you have to become realistic about a situation sometimes. And I'm not saying that's the right answer for every situation, but I am saying those kinds of situations do occur. And I have to ask myself the hard question, what do I want? If I was anybody else, what would I want for this kid? Like, if for the next 24 hours the angel of death is coming for the child, then where do I want them to be? And what would I need them to be? Right? So it's a tough thing. And even prophets were put through it. Nuh alayhi salam, Yaqub alayhi salam, they were put through difficult experiences with their kids. It's never going to get easy. Some people are blessed with very easy children. Some people are their biggest trial in life is their child. Some people's biggest trial in life is their wife. Some people's biggest trial in life is their husband. Some people's biggest trial in life is their parents. I mean, this is Allah's design, right? So you can't look at other people's kids who turned out easier and compare them to your kids and then say, "Oh, why didn't Allah give me that?" Like, you can't do that. That's unfair. Allah knew what challenges you were supposed to face in this life and what challenges somebody else was supposed to face in this life. Maybe they have easier kids, but they have a much more difficult marriage. Maybe you have easier marriage, but they have much more difficult parents. You don't know. You don't know where they got tested from, but everybody gets tested, right? So may Allah make all of our tests easy and make us a source of ease for each other. Stop talking about each other. Stop talking about somebody else's kids and how bad they got, or how somebody else's marriage is going like this, or somebody else's parents, or somebody else's in-laws. The more you comment about somebody else and talk about somebody else, and you say, astaghfirullah, look at that family, astaghfirullah, look at these kids, astaghfirullah, I saw this one, I saw that one. The more you do that, the more Allah has His way of getting other people to talk about you. Right? And you wouldn't want you on somebody else's tongue. So spare them and give them, because that could be tomorrow. That could be you tomorrow. You know? And I'll leave you with this ayah. There are people who their family member dies, and they were wealthy, and they're about to give the inheritance. And when the people in the village find out that they're about to give away the inheritance, the poor people show up. Maybe we'll get some sadaqah today too. Right? But the people that are going to inherit are like, let's keep the poor people away because we want to get our share first, then we'll think about the orphans and the beggars, etc., right? Allah says, وَلْيَخْشَ الَّذِينَ لَوْ تَرَكُوا مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّةً ضِعَافًا خَافُوا عَلَيْهِمْ فَلْيَتَّقُوا اللَّهَ وَلْيَقُولُوا قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. He says, and those who are about to inherit, they should be afraid that if they one day died and they left behind little children that were weak, that they're afraid for, then they should be mindful of Allah. Meaning, you're being insensitive to these kids outside the gate, but that could be your kids outside the gate tomorrow, right? So this is the Quran teaching us, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Put yourself in their situation. Today you're not in that situation, tomorrow you could be in that situation. Today you see one teenage girl being rebellious, tomorrow it could be your teenage girl. So don't be easy to make comments about somebody. Think of their daughter as your daughter. Think of their son as your son. Feel their pain. Have empathy. This is something that the ummah has lost. We make dua for people that are bleeding, but we cut people with our tongues openly. Right? And we say, make dua for these victims here, and these bomb victims there, and these earthquake victims there. But the people that are victims from our tongue, we don't feel anything about them. Right? So may Allah protect people from our tongues, our hearts, and may Allah really make us people of empathy.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time.
You're quite welcome.
May Allah bless you.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khairan.